Hello, everyone, and either welcome or welcome back to the Jen the Libertarian podcast. If you do like this, please rate, comment, and subscribe. You can find me on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, YouTube, and I do also now have a Patreon page where you can get early access to my episodes. I will put the link down in the show notes. So for this episode, I wanted to highlight two social media-based stories that I don't think that I would normally get to in the weekly roundup because it's not news stories like that, but it is two instances that did kind of blow up on social media, and they both pertain to kind of the same problems as far as things like over-policing and police interference in everyday life. So obviously, if you spend any time on social media, you've probably already seen both of these, but two stories that came out. The first one, we call her Churro Lady because we don't know her name, or at least as far as I know, nobody knows her name. But a Twitter thread went viral of this one woman who was in the New York City subway, and she witnessed a Churro Lady getting arrested by, if memory serves, there was 3 uniformed cops, and it looked like one plainclothes cop. And when I say the Churro Lady, obviously, I mean, she was not a licensed food vendor, and what she had was a push cart. And when I say like a push cart, I don't mean like like what you think about like an ice cream cart or something like that. I mean, like, if you've ever worked in food service, you've seen these, but like the kind of carts where you can put like 2 or 3 long trays on, and then you can just push the whole cart out. She had one of those, and she had churros on there and some chocolate candies and stuff like that. And basically, she has these 4 police officers telling her that she either needs to give up her cart and get fined, or that they're going to arrest her and take her cart. And it doesn't seem from the clip like she speaks English, like she's speaking strictly in Spanish, which this is another problem because the cops are looking at her like, we know you speak English, like, come on. And it seems like she doesn't speak English. So this is going on, and this one woman she's filming it, and ultimately they end up arresting the Churro Lady and taking her cart. And the upshot of the story is that they released her, and then she has a summons to appear in court, which obviously means there's probably going to be fines involved. Don't know if she ever got her goods back. I would have to guess probably not. But it like I said, it blew up on social media. And it's just another one of these instances where everyone's just like, what the fuck? Why are you hassling this woman? Why? She's not doing anything. Like, why is she getting arrested? Why is her stuff getting stolen? And it just struck me because it just intersects with so many things that libertarians just cannot stand, from over-policing to the licensing situation to like civil asset forfeiture, because they took her stuff. Like, that's her livelihood. Like, she's selling churros to try to make money, obviously. So you're taking her livelihood. And like I said, I'm sure she didn't get it back. You're dealing with over-policing. You're dealing with just street level harassment. And it was a really just sad story. And for what it's worth, everybody's favorite progressive, Bill de Blasio's response to this was that she had been warned multiple times that you can't sell food in the subways. You can't sell that down like in the stations, down on the platform and stuff, which if you've ever been to New York, if you've ever taken MTA, if you've taken the subways, the Churro Lady is the least of your fucking problems. Like, that is the last person you are worried about in the subway, is the lady selling churros. Like, the lady selling churros is your friend. That is the person providing a service to you. Yeah, it's not the person you're worried about. But he goes on about, oh, well, she's been warned, and we have to worry about safety, and we have to worry about crowding, and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, dude, did you really think that this was the right answer to this, instead of taking a step back and thinking, hey, maybe we should try to make life easier for the Churro Ladies of New York City, instead of trying to make it be this punitive thing, which is another problem with over-policing, is that it's never a situation, or at least it never seems to be a situation, where, like, in this particular situation, they could have just asked her, like, hey, like, listen, just take the churro cart, go home, like, just go. Like, we're not gonna harass you, we're not gonna arrest you, we're not gonna take your stuff, but you gotta go. Like, that would have been a perfectly fine way to handle it. But they chose not to. They chose to arrest this woman and take her churro cart. And for what it's worth, from what I understand, getting a food vendor license in New York City is not an easy task. So this is another thing that kind of compounds the story. It's not expensive to get it from the city. Like, I think I from what the numbers I've seen, you're probably anywhere in like the $200 to $400 range if you buy it directly from the city. The problem with buying it directly from the city is the wait time is astronomical because of course, vendor licenses are capped. Why would you just sell licenses and let the market figure out how many food vendors can any one spot support? No, that would make too much sense. So the wait time is years and years and years to get one from the city, which creates this gray market, which is the other way you can get a food vendor license. But in order to get the license off the gray market, you're looking at 5 figures. So again, this is another problem that libertarians talk about whenever you do these sorts of situations. It's like if you make something either prohibitively difficult to do or prohibitively expensive to do legally, people are going to do it illegally. I mean, that's a fact of life. Like, you can see that pretty much in any industry, in any instance, anywhere in the country. If something is very difficult to do legally, people are going to do it illegally if they really want to do the thing. And obviously, the churro lady is selling churros to pay her bills, to try to be a self-sustaining person so that she's not on welfare or anything like that. So, I mean, it was just such a ridiculous situation and something that didn't have to be. So, that is Churro Lady. Now, the other story, oddly enough, from the other side of the country over in San Francisco, is Breakfast Sandwich Guy, which, to the best of my knowledge, nobody knows his name either. But again, this was a situation where somebody took video of a police officer talking to and kind of physically restraining this man who was standing on the BART platform, which BART is the public transportation in San Francisco. He's standing on the platform, and if you're at all familiar with like MARTA or anything like that, BART platforms are like that where they're open air. So it's not like he's like in a confined space or anything. I say that just because this involves food, but he's standing up there, he's waiting for the train, he's eating a breakfast sandwich. Okay, like that's something that pretty much everybody who's ever taken mass transit to get to or from somewhere has done at some point in their life. You're eating food, you're waiting for the train. That's a totally normal thing to do. That's something I've done like 1,000 times. So, man's sitting there, he's eating his breakfast sandwich, and where the video starts is the police officer has hold of the man's backpack, and the man also has hold of his backpack. And so there's kind of like this tug of war between his backpack, and where the video starts is the police officer asking, "Show me your ID." Now, let me back this up for a second and remind you, this man was just eating a breakfast sandwich on the train platform, waiting for the train, which, according to the officer, is not allowed. It's not illegal per se. There's not a law, but it's a rule, like a BART rule, that you can't eat on the platform. Anyway, video goes on. The woman filming it makes 2 incredibly cogent points here, which is that A, there's no signs anywhere saying that you can't eat on the platform, and B, there's a food store at the station selling food. So, like, why would you be selling food there if you can't eat it there? And a point that I would have made is that if there's going to be a store selling food at the BART station, then there should be signs in the food store saying that you can't eat the food out on the platform or on the train. So, absent any of that, how would anybody know that eating a breakfast sandwich while waiting for the train is somehow wrong? But anyway, this goes on. It escalates. He actually ends up getting arrested too for resisting arrest because, I mean, who wouldn't resist arrest for something as ridiculous as eating a sandwich on the platform? Like, who's just going to meekly go along with that? Like, nobody should. Like, that's absolutely absurd. And that's an argument that I see people make all the time, is like, just do what they say and worry about it later. It's like, no. At some point, you have to acknowledge the fact that the thing that you're being asked to do is absolutely fucking absurd. And that thing is, I am not going to show you my ID. I'm not going to give you my papers because I was eating a breakfast sandwich on the platform. Like, that's a completely logical thing to refuse to do to anybody with half a brain that isn't an utter and complete bootlicker or somebody who even remotely thinks before doing something. So that ends up happening. He gets arrested. I don't know what ends up happening to him. I mean, I would assume they would have released him too, because, I mean, again, both of these cases are cases that generated a lot of attention on social media. A lot of people were pissed off. I've seen this discussed on various daytime talk shows, especially the Bart situation. And it's like, yeah, it's absurd. It's abso-freaking-lutely absurd, both cases. So I wanted to talk about these two because, like I said, they are of a piece with each other, where they both start, first off, with police officers choosing to handle a situation in a certain way. Now, to go ahead and answer the argument off the rip of, well, cops have to enforce the law. Okay. If you want to go with that, fine. I would say that that's up to every police officer. But when you are law enforcement, you have leeway in how exactly you go about that mandate. You can do it in a way that is peaceful, in a way that de-escalates a situation, or you can do it in a way that escalates a situation. And it seems to me, especially in both of these cases, and in so many other cases that we see that end way more horrifically than these two did, is that cops choose to handle situations in a way that escalates. Like I said, with the churro lady, they could have just asked her to leave. With breakfast sandwich guy, the cop could have just been like, yo, dude, you can't eat that here. Just put the sandwich up and finish it later. That's all that had to be done. That's it. That's all that had to be said. And I'm sure in both instances, the people involved would have just been like, okay, like I'll either take my cart and go, or I'll just put my sandwich back in my bag and I'll finish eating it later. And that would have been it. And everybody could have went about their day. None of this would have had to be a big deal. Nobody would have had to have a negative interaction with the police. The police wouldn't be having to deal with this PR situation now. Like, there's just, it seems like police are just increasingly not choosing to take that de-escalation route, which, like I said, obviously in other situations that get a lot more press than these two, it ends poorly. It ends up with people either getting injured or getting killed because cops didn't de-escalate. So I think that's a point that a lot of people tend to miss in when we have these conversations about police and police violence and police activity and how police interact with their communities. Is there is a lot of leeway, and however the police choose to interact with a situation is their choice. It's not mandated. You don't have to be a dick. You can not be a dick and still do your job. It's fine. But the next point, I kind of want to go from there to this next point, is just the concept of over-policing in the first place. Like, why did the churro lady require 3 uniform and 1 plainclothes cop to be dealt with? Like, it's just the churro lady. Like, what did they think she was gonna do? Like, pull a gun? Like, why the fuck are there so many cops here to hassle this woman? And that's another situation that's kind of percolating in other various sorts of ways online, is that the New York City is putting more cops down in the subway stations because of fare evasion and just bullshit stuff like that. But it's going to mean that there's just going to be more cops just kind of hanging out in the subway. And I'm not particularly comfortable with that. Like, I like to go up to New York City. I'm not super cool with the idea of just like being in the subway station or on the platform and there's just cops milling around. Like, that shit makes me nervous. Like, I don't like that. I'm more worried about the cops than I am about anybody else on the platform. Like, that just makes me nervous. And in the San Francisco situation, like, unless, I mean, you have cops there, I guess, if you want to, but why? Like, and I've heard plenty of stories about San Francisco and about BART and about the things that happen on public transportation in San Francisco. Breakfast sandwich guy is like literally the least of their problems. Like why are you hassling the guy eating the breakfast sandwich? Like, why are you saying anything to him at all? He's just eating his breakfast the way I'm sure millions of other people do. Like, there was actually in the video other people like in the background eating on the platform. It's just like, what the fuck? Why? And it kind of leads to that concept of it kind of hashtag doing X while black or doing X while brown. In this case, eating while black or selling churros while brown, where it does really kind of lean into the notion of racial profiling. And I don't kid myself. Like, it's not just a black person or a brown person thing. They do it to white people too. They do it to pretty much anybody they think they can fuck with. Like, that's not, I mean, they do it more to certain people, but I think there is definitely a class aspect that needs to be discussed there along with a racial aspect. But cops do, quite frequently, pull people over, stop people, whatever, somehow detain you temporarily on some dumb bullshit reason to try to flip you up to something bigger. Like, I have no doubt that if Breakfast Sandwich Guy had handed over his ID, the cop would have ran it to see if there was anything outstanding on him. Like, that's the whole point of doing shit like that. That's the whole point of pulling somebody over for having a busted taillight or a blown out tag light or some stupid petty bullshit, is so that you can try to see, like, oh, let me run your plates. Let me run your license plate. Let me see, do you have anything in your car that looks suspicious? I mean, that's what they do. That's what traffic stops are. I mean, it's always trying to flip something up to a larger charge. And so that goes hand in hand with overpolicing, and that also goes hand in hand with just how cops operate in the United States. And the motto, in some way, shape, or form, for every police department in the United States is something along the lines of protect and serve, which it's been pointed out so many times, but I will do it right here. Cops are under no legal obligation to do either one of those things for you. Cops are under no obligation to put themselves in any kind of danger or inconvenience themselves in any way if you are in trouble. If you need the ultimate example, look at the Parkland shooting. There was a police officer on the set. Did he go into school? No. He hid. And legally speaking, there's nothing you can do to that dude, because legally speaking, he wasn't obligated to do that. He wasn't obligated to go in there and try to engage the shooter. So this whole idea that cops are here to help you, not really, because there's no legal obligation for them to do so at any time that they don't feel like doing it. But even if you wanted to lean into that motto of protect and serve, in these two instances, who was protected and who was served? Nobody was protected. I mean, because neither one of these people was doing anything to anybody. They were just basically non-violently doing things and going about their life. Nobody was bothered. I don't think anybody called the cops on either one of these two people. And as far as being served, well, nobody was served either. Like, the people that were waiting for the churro lady certainly weren't served. Like, I'm sure that probably inconvenienced a lot of people. I'm sure there was probably people getting off the train who expected the churro lady to be there, and then she wasn't there, and it's like, well, hell, now where am I going to get food? And for what it's worth, I mean, yes, selling food in the subway station is illegal, but there is no other, it's not like there's sanctioned, like, food places on the subway terminal, usually. I mean, you've got places like Rockefeller Center and stuff like that where there's, like, it's a big elaborate thing and there's restaurants, but by and large, It's not like there's like McDonald's and Burger King and Subway and shit down in the subway stations. It's just subway stations. So if you are commuting and you're kind of running from train to train, a lot of people use these vendors as food sources because it's easier than exiting the station, going and finding some place to get food, getting the food, going back down into the station and trying to catch the next train. It's a hell of a lot more convenient to just buy a churro or an apple or whatever the food vendor is selling in the station. They're providing a service. I don't care if New York City doesn't like it or not. This should be how the market works. They are providing a service. People are using the service. Everybody's happy. But those people who were waiting for the churro lady certainly weren't served. I mean, nobody was particularly served by arresting a guy eating a breakfast sandwich on a subway platform. Like, I don't think anybody cared. Like, I'm sure nobody gave a shit that dude was eating his breakfast sandwich because everybody else was probably eating their breakfast sandwich because everybody's trying to get to work and everybody's got to eat breakfast. So it's just the whole concept of policing in this country is really getting kind of out of hand, and it's something that, again, we talk about it on the big cases. We talk about it when people end up injured. We end up talking about it when people get killed. We talk about the Eric Garners of the world and the Tamir Rices and all of the other people who end up dead at the end of police violence. But what also needs to be discussed are these cases too, because these are the ones that affect almost everybody at some point in their life. Like, it's this little petty, low-level bullshit that people are made to deal with that, I mean, granted, you're not injured, you're not dead. You could end up getting arrested, you could end up getting detained, and then that ends up putting you into the criminal justice system, in our incarceration system, which that's a whole nother ball of wax, because even if you get released, then you probably have to go in front of a judge. You probably have fines that you're going to have to pay. And now what happens if you don't pay the fines? You go back to jail. What can you not do in jail? You can't pay your fines in jail. So you stay in jail. It's a ridiculous circular system. And don't even get me started on bail. That's a whole nother ball of wax. So anything that ends up putting people, even for dumb shit, into the incarceration system, it starts this loop that unless you have the time and money to get yourself out of the loop, you're kind of screwed. So that makes it even worse when people get arrested for petty shit, because now something that didn't even need to happen can snowball into something that ruins somebody's life. And it's just like, it doesn't need to be this way. Like, it needs to be de-escalated somehow, and that's pretty much it. Like, and this is really, that's why I wanted to highlight these two, is because this really, like I said, touches on a lot of problems that libertarians have with our current police system, with our current criminal justice system, with our current incarceration system. And it's just, it highlights how the dumbest shit can turn into something completely life-altering. Like, I don't know if anybody set up a GoFundMe for Churro Lady. I know people were talking about it. I'm sure if somebody has the means to do it, it's been done, and I just don't know about it. I certainly hope so, because I don't know how else this woman is going to be able to pay whatever fines New York City wants to levy on her for illegally selling churros in the subway for breakfast sandwich guy. I mean, I hope the same thing for him too, because again, I don't know his financial situation. I don't know if he's going to be able to pay the fines that San Francisco is going to levy on him for eating a breakfast sandwich on the BART platform. Like, it's so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. And so, on that note, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. So, as always, if you did make it this far, thank you for listening. And if you do like this, please rate, comment, and subscribe. You can find me on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, YouTube, and on my Patreon page. Take care, and until next time.